Hello, this is Andy Park. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at TeamCentral, and this is our second panel discussion on getting your business AI ready. I'm very excited to have a really talented group of professionals here joining us, and I really appreciate you sharing your perspectives on what it takes to get a business AI ready. Without further ado, I'll introduce Edward Harof, who is the President CEO of Digital Cloud Solutions, and he will be our moderator for today's session.
Thank you, Andy. And let me introduce our distinguished panel here. Begin with Summer Crenshaw. She's the CEO of Enterprise Technology Association, co-founder of Cincy AI Week, which is having an event coming up in June. Summer's known for her ability to empower teams and organizations to integrate AI effectively. Known as the Terminator Whisperer, turning out any fears of AI into tangible successes, strategy successes, serial entrepreneur, helping companies. She co-founded a series of AI-focused events that draw thousands of technology leaders nationwide. Most importantly for our discussion, Summer helps businesses move past AI paralysis and transform into high-performing AI-enabled powerhouses. Next, please welcome Joseph Hours, partner of Centric Consulting and director of AI Solutions. Joseph has nearly 3 decades of technology innovation under his belt, and his passion lies in cutting-edge AI with real-world business applications. As a member of the Forbes Technology Council and AI thought leader, he's helped Fortune 500 companies evolve their digital landscapes through AI, machine learning, and intelligent automation. Joseph's approach centers on creating AI governance structures, building AI agent frameworks, and aligning business strategy with AI use cases to deliver measurable impact. Our next speaker, Colleen Campbell, founder of A Human Eye, and an AI strategist who focuses on people-first technology solutions. Colleen believes in successful AI integration is not just about powerful algorithms, it's about harmony between people, processes, and tech. She's led teams across diverse industries, guiding businesses to see AI as an opportunity rather than a challenge. Most notably, Colleen's dedication to keeping the human element front and center has helped organizations effectively adopt AI in ways that are intuitive, ethical, and drive real business value. Now let's welcome John LeComte, Director of Data and AI at Lidl US. John brings a wealth of experience turning data into actionable insights, tackling everything from demand forecasting to custom segmentation and fraud detection. Before joining Lidl, he spent years consulting on data science, management, and governance in the cloud with enterprise leaders. Armed with advanced degrees from Villanova and Johns Hopkins, John is passionate about operationalization, cutting-edge machine learning pipelines, and how to solve real business challenges. Next on our list, pleased to introduce Jackie Herman, a client account lead and for manufacturing, consumer packaged goods, retail, enterprise operating unit at Avanade. Jackie is technology transformation specialist, architecting modern data, cloud, and AI solutions while leading large, globally distributed teams. She's successfully driven large-scale initiatives and sales pursuits, focusing on delivering real business outcomes through advanced analytics, AI, and DevOps practices. Her combination of technical expertise and people-focused leadership helps organizations adopt AI solutions that are not only innovative, but also sustainable and widely embraced. And finally, I'd like to introduce Marc Johnson, co-founder of TeamCentral, the host of today's panel. Marc is the lead visionary behind TeamCentral's product strategy and has been instrumental in shaping the platform's AI capabilities. He's passionate about bridging technology and business objectives to create solutions that drive meaningful improvements for teams and organizations. Marc's background is centered on product innovation, and his track record of exploring and integrating AI with TeamCentral's offerings shows he's committed to delivering real-world AI-driven results, resulting in the latest enhancements you've read about Sidekick. So welcome all of you, and let's have some fun here. So we'll begin with questions. I'll assign them to the names that we gave everybody, but feel free to interact. And of course, any real world example that you can inject, because we're not talking theory here, we're talking reality, and that's what people want to see, is how can we take this and apply it tomorrow, and help people get over the fears out there and bring it in-house and start to use it. So we'll start with, what are the emerging AI trends or technologies that leaders should be paying attention to in the next 3 to 5 years? We'll start with Colleen.
Hi, thanks, Edward. Appreciate that. I think there are 3 big trends that I'm seeing, and I think they're coming way faster than 3 to 5 years. Some of them are obviously are being utilized now, but the use of them is going to increase over the next couple of years. So the first one I would say is AI agents. That's huge. So agentic AI. A lot of people are already using this, and even folks like one of my colleagues did it to clean up her email the other day. So something simple like that, but it's also being used for, we've got it on the larger platforms like ServiceNow is using it, where they have a centralized agent, and that agent works with other agents within their platform. So just to give you the basic of what AI agents are, basically it works autonomously. So you have a given task, you set up an agent, this agent will go out and complete that task for you, and they'll do autonomously. So they'll be seeking using various different sources out there that they can utilize, whether it's internally or externally, and then they come back and they make decisions, and then they share that information with you. So that's your agent, or your so-called agent that's going to be supporting you, collaborating with you, and helping you come up with the best answer. So a simple example I can give you is a marketing campaign. So if I have an agent set up, I can actually go out, and that agent can go write the copy for me. So if I want to do a weekly blog, it can go ahead and write the copy for me, and I might have a central agent that's processing it. So central agent goes to the content agent, and that content agent brings it back. I review it, like it, thumbs up. Then it goes into the image agent. The image agent will create an image based on that blog, come back to the central process agent, and go ahead and I prove it again. And then continues through where you can actually go through and have an agent that will actually look at those results and say, here's the performance based on that. So it's something that can make me do my job a lot faster and quicker. And then, like I said, it's being used across multiple industries right now and being incorporated into very large scale platforms. So that's one thing. So agent itself, but there's multi-agent services that are called agents. You could also call them agencies, where they are doing multi-agents. The other one is geospatial models. I think those are pretty exciting. So if you think of Pokemon Go, that's a geospatial model where folks could actually, go out and find these augmented reality Pokemons, and that was done through location data that would be people would come to a certain location and they'd actually take a look at, find their Pokemon. So that's caused a lot of transformation in how we find information out, and geospatial information for companies. So for example, you could change how we do things as we go forward. Now, Uber has used a lot of this, obviously, excuse me, in their work, but also looking at things like what could you do with this down the road? Climate change. You could also think about utilities can use this to just take a look at, how are growth and vegetation affecting lines? Also, how about maintenance and predictive maintenance and things like that could use. So having clarity in a geospatial model is a really cool way to understand how our world is evolving. And it comes from, we went from LLMs to these 2D bit photos or images to 3D models. And now the geospatial is that whole next level. So that one's really exciting. And I'll finish it out with AI robotics. I think those are really exciting too, what we're doing with that. There are healthcare, obviously surgeries can be done by robots now at this point. So they're robots doing surgery. There's obviously the e-cars that we've seen for many years now. There are things like the food delivery vehicles also that deliver food to your house. So these are things that are going to be more and more. We're going to see a lot more of this going forward. And I think there's also things from like drones that can manage, you know, agricultural and look at crops. So there's a ton coming in that space too. And even at home, we're going to have help at home. And if you think about elderly care, that could be huge, what could happen with elderly care, and just looking at how this new technology and these robots are able to, you know, be companions and support elderly, since we don't have enough support in those areas. So a lot to come in those areas, but those are 3 trends that I see that are pretty exciting and coming up.
Thank you, Colleen. Jackie?
Sure, and absolutely agree with Colleen. I think agentic AI is one of the largest trends for 2025. Since Colleen focused, pretty heavily on, more of the generalized AI trends, I might look more at manufacturing, CPG, and retail, and talk about some of the top trends there. Things like digital transformation and automation. In the case of manufacturing, we're really looking at the evolution from Industry 4.0 into Industry 5.0, which is really more humanized. And then some of the power of, building in these agents into kind of the manufacturing mix, to look at the data across systems, IoT, robotics, et cetera, to make it kind of a manufacturing superpower for information. I would also say sustainability. I agree with some of Colleen's comments there as well. That's huge in terms of both manufacturing, in terms of the materials and product life cycle, as well as for retail and CPG. The millennials and Gen Z, they're going to spend more green for green products and services. So sustainability is definitely a big 2025 trend. I would also say that some of the geopolitical things like tariffs and things like that impact the supply chain, that certainly is another very large trend. So AI-driven supply chain is another thing that we're absolutely seeing in terms of more predictive supply and demand, things like inventory and other things along those lines within the supply chain. And then, of course, the whole labor challenges across both manufacturing, retail, and CPG as well. And we are seeing, especially in manufacturing, the use of AI to, really help kind of fill some of the gap in workforce shortages, and aid in that regard. Want to leave time as well if you want to ask some of the others.
Thank you. Summer?
In addition to the lovely ladies' previous conversation, I think there's a couple of major changes we're just going to see in the future of work. So what does it look like for work, and how will it be done? So this weekend, the Anthropic CEO said in the next 3 to 6 months, 90% of all code written will be done by AI. And he's predicting in the next 12 months, 100% of it will be done by AI. I don't think that that's going to take effect, because we've got a lot of folks that really have not adopted the type of tech it would take for an entire development team to 100% rely on code. But it does, I think, open up an interesting point of how companies are adopting quickly to new technology, and they're augmenting their workforce. So I think that's going to be a huge, interesting challenge over the next, I would say, 12 to 18 months as that pivot occurs. I also think that there's some really interesting things that are happening where we are seeing AI accelerate at a faster clip, and new technology being released at a cost that's significantly less what it used to be. So once we saw DeepSeek come out from China, and tout how how it was released and how it was built and how it was designed to be so much more significantly less than what we have seen here in the States. Very soon after, Grok had a very similar breakthrough in what they released here stateside in the US as well. So we're already seeing this kind of ping pong of evolution. I think that's going to continue. This weekend, I actually got access to Manus, which is a new agentic technology that was just released, and it's probably one of the first true Gen AI agentic systems that have really hit the market, that have been kind of a shock and awe to see it be released. So I think we're going to continue from a humanity perspective, have these moments of like, oh wow, I would never think this was possible or that was possible, and then all of a sudden what is possible becomes kind of old news fairly quickly. And I think it's going to be a challenge for organizations from a operational perspective to look at how do they evaluate this, how do they augment their workforce, and then how do they really upskill or cross-skill their own workforce so that they can actually utilize all of the technology that's coming into play. So I think we're going to see an aggressive, 6 to 18 months where we're going to really feel disruption pretty aggressively. And then I think we'll start to move into more of this commonplace adoption. And that will become more of our normal way by which we're all going to operate.
I might add one other thing, and that is really kind of the graph-based or knowledge graph-based solutions where data is represented as nodes and relationships to really allow for the representation of complex data. And we're really seeing where this can have a huge impact in manufacturing with manufacturing data solutions, and especially using things like Microsoft Fabric. Because really it removes a lot of the data silos that we're seeing in many industries and enables that data really for generative AI and more conversational usage. So it really empowers, kind of the regular worker versus having to have, IT in the mix, et cetera, and makes for, kind of that whole data availability and really conversational and really the general interaction with the data to ask questions and find solutions and really kind of empower workers in their day. So I think that's really another kind of huge trend and opportunity in terms of AI.
And that's a very interesting topic. Fabric is something that we're doing an event on at the IMACP in Atlanta. So Fabric is going to be huge, but let's keep going with the questions. This is an interesting one because what specific industries or roles do you feel will most likely be impacted by AI? And I guess I think which ones won't be in my mind, but so I guess we could rank them. Colleen?
Yeah, thanks, Edward. I think it's going to be everywhere, first of all. I mean, every industry is being impacted, and we just know this is just a reality.
Right.
But the ones that are really moving fast and furious, I think healthcare definitely, healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, retail. I mean, I think those are some of the bigger ones. Just a lot going on very fast. So, and for example, healthcare, I know Mayo Clinic has they've got a new AI that they're using to support their doctors and nurses to analyze complex medical imaging that's actually 99% accurate. So what that helps is really be able to get the accuracy and then the diagnosis quicker and faster, but it also gives doctors the time to focus on more complex cases and also to give more, obviously, human care to their patients. So that's been a pretty exciting one of the more successful ones. We also know financial services, JP Morgan, they have a tool called Coin, which is a contract intelligence and basically allows them to process legal documents very quickly versus having to do them manually as they did before, saving them hundreds of thousands of time and hours. So I think that's pretty exciting to see how quickly things, especially things that are repetitive, that people, a repetitive type of work that isn't as exciting for humans, I think overall, those are things that can be done through AI now. And those are the things, the low hanging fruit that are really starting to move fast, that people can utilize these tools to do document scanning, to analyze basic documents, and cut down the manual hours that are needed to get those things done. So this gives really lawyers the opportunity to really, again, focus on more complex areas, focus on more strategy and how they're really thinking through these decisions as they go forward. And then I would say manufacturing, Siemens has a really interesting product that helps predict maintenance in facilities to really keep the downtime, reduce the downtime of lines or different facilities, which is pretty extraordinary because if you think about the cost of when your line is down, that's cost a lot of money for each minute that your line is down. So having this ability to predict some of these maintenance issues that could come up and be able to address those, it really gives your team the ability to focus on the problems that could happen versus being reactive in the moment and addressing them then. So these things could really obviously help us as a human society move faster, think smarter. And then one other thing I'd hit on in this space is that there's definitely, it's going to be everywhere. It's hitting everyone in these various industries, but it's also very functionally based too. If you think about the changes that are happening in the functional space. So there's marketing and sales, customer service is obviously one of the bigger hit areas. Obviously we have chat, we have chat bots and those things, for a long time here, but when you look at, there's going to be a lot more in just understanding behaviors through predictive modeling, that's going to be utilized more and more by companies. Obviously, Amazon has done a ton in this space to think through how they're analyzing algorithms and deciding what products and services you might want next. So there's a lot to come in the marketing and sales. Finance and accounting is another big one, just looking at fraud detection, human resources, and being able to screen resumes and do a lot of recruiting through that, and being able to maybe even do your initial interviews are ways that this could be utilized too. I think the supply chain is huge from a logistics standpoint, as far as how you're thinking about how supply chain is shifting and changing, with just looking at your warehouses and how you optimize, and maybe you have just pickers that can quickly get their products that you need and a lot faster than even humans can. So definitely some challenges on how do we think about this from a humanities standpoint as we go forward, but there's just a lot of interesting things moving fast. And it's definitely time for organizations to get on board. And we know it's the larger ones that are investing most of the money right now, but down the road, everyone's going to be doing AI.
Summer, can you build on that?
Yeah, I think, what I get I guess the luxury of seeing at a grassroots level of what's happening in like the cities that we serve. So we have AI weeks in 8 cities across America, and most of them are in what I would affectionately call flyover cities. So not the typical Bostons of the world, or, looking at what we have out in Silicon Valley. I think what's really interesting is, organizations still have a bit of trepidation and paralysis, for lack of a better term, about going into this. And so you either have organizations that are just going hog wild in every type of AI they can possibly get their hands on in a very controlled environment, or you've got folks that are just totally scared of it and they're really staying away. But their boards are telling them, you have to explore this. You have to move forward with this. We know that this is not a .com boom bust scenario, that this is actually something that will fundamentally transform how we do work. From an industry perspective, I love the kind of the healthcare conversation. I'm definitely having a lot with healthcare organizations. It's been a focus of a couple of our shows, manufacturing as well. But I do think that we're going to see this latency where most will be looking at how do you speed up a process? How do you increase efficiencies in like the day-to-day, activities that we think we can give over to the robots, so to speak? And then how do we pivot into something where we're going to find, I don't know, cures for cancer by using new quantum computers that, hopefully will be more commonplace by 2028, right? So there's this big discrepancy of like marketing campaign and doing that to actual really in like amazing breakthroughs for humanity. So I think that, it's going to be a bit of an interesting push-pull and a bit of an even playing field as well, because with AI, as long as you have access and you have compute and a willingness to like try this out, it won't just be organizations and institutions that are researching out of the coast that are going to lead the way. It's actually going to be those that are like grassroots, kind of doing that work, in some of the smaller cities across America and really across the globe. So I think that it's going to be an interesting time period that we're going to see from the adoption perspective, and who will lead or who will survive this period of transformation is really going to be those that learn to have the technology as more of a co-pilot and not the Microsoft Copilot, but a co-pilot that's actually augmenting your work in order to, really accelerate that. And honestly, organizations that are really thoughtful about their people. I think one of the challenges I've had in a lot of the companies I've worked with have been that they expect to be able to hire experts in this, and there aren't a lot, number one. And then number two, when they expect to adapt to it, they don't think thoughtfully about how do you actually upskill your people. And that is going to be a part of like critical workforce development. And we really haven't seen that. It's like, yeah, back in the day, we all got, internet access. Okay, that's phase one. Then we got our smartphones. Okay, we all kind of fumbled through that and we got used to it. And then we saw the changes. This is something that like there aren't experts. I mean, there are very few on earth that are like true AI or machine learning experts. This is going to have an impact where the average person, I don't care if you are a plumber, all the way to, some of the highest, level, in scientists, everyone's going to use it. And the weirdest thing about, I think, what I see is that because of generative and because of the way that it's been trained, we all actually have to get a little bit more human, because that's the way you have to speak to the technology, and a little less dependent on those folks that originally were, kind of the elite class in development, right? So I think that that's also a part of, workforce planning and development, operationalizing this and embracing it for the average person all the way through the top echelon of a workforce.
Oh, that's super important. And HR needs to have a prompt segment in their training guide for all the employees. I mean, that's just existing and new. So
And I think you have
we
to
got,
decide who owns AI. That's one of the
yeah,
hardest questions I think any organization has to ask. And there, I think the earlier developers really thought, or those organizations that were really diving in, really have thought, oh, well, it is our chief security officer, right? Or it is the CTO because it's tech, or it's the CIO. But really, when you look across the board, it's not just a tech scenario. It's really permeating across the entire organization. And so that ownership of AI is going to be critical to define, and it's going to look different for every organization.
next up, what use cases for AI are you seeing, and which ones are easiest or hardest to solve? Joe?
Yeah, so this dovetails nicely into a lot of the comments that the other panelists have mentioned on here. So I'm going to focus a little bit on agentic AI, because 2025 will be the year of agentic AI, and I sort of break it down into three categories, going from simplest to implement to most complicated. And so the first is what we would call sort of reactive. Which is actually how most people are experiencing generative AI today, right? They sit at a prompt, they type something in, they get a response back. It's a very limited interaction, almost individual conversations, if you will. But with agentic AI folded in there, what we're going to see is folks are going to start doing things like, chatting with knowledge bases or documents, which is usually where people start. It's the simplest place to start. There's a wide variety of tools that you can use to do this. So you can have a chat interface to chat with your HR policies. You can have a chat interface to chat with, IT support. But we're going to see some more sophisticated implementations. Somebody earlier mentioned, ServiceNow as an example. You're going to see lots of platforms. Salesforce, Agentforce is going down this route, where you're going to be able to chat with a backend system and be able to query for information, be able to create records, be able to create updates through a very simple interactive sort of chat interface. And that's where most people are going to start. And I would say 75% of people are probably in that realm or getting ready to enter that realm today. The next realm is sort of more what I would call process-oriented agents. There's sort of that medium complexity there. And process-oriented agents are just exactly like they sound, right? These are agents that can take a series of static and dynamic tasks, and they can automate them. And so there was an example that Colleen mentioned earlier from a marketing perspective, but you can extend this to any industry. If you're an insurance industry, you could have an agent monitoring an email inbox for new business quotes or new business requests coming in. It can process all of the Accord application documents. It can go look up lost information on the company. It can look at the company's risk analysis and underwriting regulations to come up with that scorecard, determine what policies, exclusions, and limits might exist, and then create a bindable quote in the system and have that automatically sent to the customer. Those are sort of that medium complexity realm. Probably 23% of the folks are sort of in that realm. And then finally, on the far end of the spectrum, the most complicated to implement are adaptable agents. And these are agents that you don't give them tasks, and they're not simply reactive, but they're actually self-corrective, and you give them a goal. And in these ecosystems, you give them a goal, they go through and figure out what they need to do, what tools they need, they equip themselves, they start to execute, they track their progress, and then they self-modify as they go through there to see if they're on track or not. This is sort of the holy grail that folks want, because they want an agent that is omnipotent and omniscient at the same time, which is it could do everything and be everything at all times for all people. That's actually not what's going to pan out in the long run, but you will have adaptable agents that are suited for specific type examples, and they'll mostly likely be actually multi-agent ecosystems. So, supply chain, you might have an agent that's looking at your current raw material depletion rates. You might look at your, what inventory you have on hand and how quickly you're selling that. You might look at your sales forecasting pipeline and then have these agents work together and figure out, oh, this is the optimal time to order new raw materials so that I can minimize how much inventory and raw materials I have on, on my premises at any given time, right? So we'll get there eventually, but that's sort of a long ways out. There are leaders who are going down this space. Somebody talked about Amazon earlier. This is a classic example. What we're seeing today is folks are focused on AI as a point solution, which is, hey, I've got this specific pain point. I want to swap this pain point, with an AI solution to solve it, whether it's I don't have enough customer service staff, or I don't have enough people to handle this. That's where they're focused today. And then from there, they start moving into more solution-oriented approaches, which is how do I re-envision my entire thing? So the example I use about a process agent, re-envisioning underwriting, for example, right? How do I re-envision how this process flows to be AI-powered and AI-driven? We're seeing a smaller, portion there. And then in the third sort of category, this truly transformative use cases of AI, very, very few people are doing it outside the very, very large companies. And so Amazon is a classic example that is pushing the boundaries. Right now, Amazon has what we know as a shop to ship model, which is you go online, you search for your products, you add it to cart, you check out, it gets delivered to your home. Imagine if you reverse that and had a ship to shop model, which is they just delivered products to your doorstep and you accepted or rejected that shipment at your doorstep, and that completed the shopping experience. If they can get their analytics to be good enough that they know that the rejection rate is going to be low, and if the return processing is efficient enough, that's going to truly transform their entire supply chain, right? They'll be less reliant on warehouses and more reliant on controlling flow of goods through their system in completely, truly transformative way. And we're going to get there, right, in short period of time, because, AI is as impactful as the Industrial Revolution was to agricultural society, but it's not going to take decades to unfold. We're talking years for this to unfold, and it's unfolding now. So in terms of use cases, people chatting with documents, systems, those simple interactions, that's where people are today. We see a lot of that. We see lots of tools coming out. I think Gartner said there's 25,000 new tools and services. Most of those are focused in that arena. Then you start moving into the process arena, and now we're talking, this is more than RPA, but most people sort of equate it to RPA on steroids. But we're talking high friction tasks, being able to eliminate that and eliminate those bottlenecks. We see that there. And then the transformative thing, only the big people are playing in that space, but that's going to come. It's all going to be democratized.
It's interesting. So AI is bringing back a door-to-door salesperson. So that, in a sense. So Jackie.
Sure, and definitely have some more real life types of use cases. I would say, in the manufacturing sector, we're working with Bridgestone and have been working with them for about a year now around production loss reduction and digital root cause analysis. So leveraging Microsoft's manufacturing cloud as well as Fabric and co-pilots as well as agentic AI to work with them in that space as well. We are working with Scheffler for machine operator support with some of their machine operators in their factories for retrieval of condition-based manufacturing and machinery data on the shop floor. So a lot of shop floor use cases with MDS in that space. Personally, I'm working with an aircraft cargo client for on two different types of agents. One is a sales agent. We're actually working with Microsoft to co-create this agent for that client. So we've got both a finance agent and a sales agent. The finance agent is using certain like variance and loss scenarios that we've been working with them on. And then, in the retail space, we built a magic try-on feature for retailers. And then, of course, working with Microsoft as well with their retail cloud, and several, if you were at Microsoft Ignite, they've got several use cases that are going right for frontline workers, actually in retail scenarios, across many, many, many regards.
Yeah, I won't. Jackie and Joe did a great job of breaking down a lot of the use cases we're experiencing and building to as well. I just maybe wanted to take a little bit different track in terms of what's powering these use cases. The way in which we kind of think about this stuff is in the progression of it is, if you think of all these individualized things that you want an agent or some kind of even robotic system to do is tasks or skills. And so if you look at a lot of the kind of the early use cases, really dependent on unstructured data. That's why we saw a lot of things kind of verticalized in contract management, healthcare, things like that. And I think the opportunity now, and where we'll really see the explosion of kind of more of generalized use cases and more skills, is in more of the structured data. So being able to interact with systems in kind of a bidirectional way, with both structured and unstructured data, that will increase the number of skills that you can train in, some form of an agent to do, and that's just going to have a broader impact in terms of the number of people that get touched. If you look at products, like a Microsoft Copilot or some of the things that are being built on the Salesforce platform, you really can't get the most value out of those platforms unless the data that's being provided to it and it has access to is good quality data, and you have that connectivity and accessibility in a really simple turnkey way for people to implement.
Thank you. Next up, what techniques can be used to improve the accuracy and reliability of data, high quality data, trustworthy, accurate results, and applied responsibility? John?
Yeah, I think Marc just touched on something there. You have to have the data in an environment in the first place that it can be accessible to the users. And then once you have that set up, then you can set up some sort of report or dashboard or mechanism to monitor all of the results from your AI models, right? So you want to make sure that the data going in is high quality, so that way your results are also high quality, and then having something that can measure that output to say, yes, this model is performing as expected, or it's trending downwards, something is happening, and then you can go in, take action, and investigate, the root cause of why the performance is degrading as a result.
Yeah. Why is data so important in this conversation? How do you manage infrastructure and integrate data from multiple sources for AI projects? Marc, close to the heart.
Yeah. So there's a lot of patterns that are emerging in ways in which this can be done through the full stack, both from the UI all the way down to kind of the lowest form of data. I mentioned in kind of my previous comments around really thinking about these AI in agentic products in terms of skills. But the way in which we really think about it is trying to get things into as much of a common format as possible. So you have all these different kind of disparate systems that might exist within an organization, but being able to really kind of think about and model and bring in products that can get that data into a common format that then can be well integrated and accessible to some form of AI model.
John? Bill?
Yeah. So from my side, a lot of what Marc said, we do as well. So we land the data in a object storage in the cloud to make sure it's scalable, something like S3 or Azure storage. And then from there, you can layer on a whole bunch of solutions depending on what that use case is, everything from Azure Machine Learning to AWS SageMaker or Databricks or Snowflake, a lot out there in terms of what others can use to really get after the data, start building those models and drive some actionable insights.
I just might weigh in
Yeah,
here as
go ahead.
well, and say that, we're really finding, I mean, a lot of companies, right, they're not ready and their data's not ready. So we are really trying to meet people where they are and try to find those right use cases and even kind of front load the use cases that we're seeing, that are kind of the top use cases industry wide as we work across our customers. And then, it's really for AI to work best, it's really about having that proprietary company data. So, trying to start small where maybe companies do have, good data or clean data, and finding that right use case where there's high value for them and their company and organization to prove, not only business value and potential monetary ROI, but to build trust because people are nervous. And we are very big at Avanade about our responsible AI framework, and looking across a variety of factors, in order to bring AI in. And so I think it's really important to kind of start small and then find that right place where you're not having to invest a ton over, a lot of time in order to get to that data, in order to kind of create a proving ground. And that has worked really well. We've also kind of taken the use case approach where, we'll have, especially in manufacturing, we've got like a top 10 use case scenario where we will go into clients with those use cases, right, and look more deeply with them, get their feedback, ask, are these relevant to you? What do you think? Get their data. We have a lot of, those top 10 use cases also have kind of like the key personas. They also have the benefits. And so we're finding really good value with that in terms of meeting our customers where they are, getting them more quickly from point A to point B. We started kind of initially going in with, advisory engagements, and people get advisory fatigue, right? Workshop fatigue. So it's worked really well. It's helped to fast track some of, helping get people to dip their toe in the water of AI on more the longer range, kind of bigger types of engagements, to get going with AI.
Thank you. Well, that actually is a good segue to 23, which was how to prepare your workforce. So how do you align? There's, I think everybody has some area here, and how do you align the leadership around the AI strategy, and what should leaders do now to understand and embrace AI as a competitive difference? And I think in this sense, in this part of the conversation, that if they don't do that, they're going to lose a competitive advantage. So emphasizing to them that they need to do this and they need to have a layout. So maybe Colleen, you could start with that.
Yeah, sure. That's a lot in that question, so I'll answer what I can here. So I would say, first of all, your business, you're in the same business, your business is not changing, but how you do your business is changing. So AI should amplify your competitive advantages and think through that. So if you're Chick-fil-A and your customer, service is one of your, strengths, you want to make sure that your AI is supporting that. So AI should be looking at, like, from your logistics standpoint, are you making sure that you have the products that your customers want at the store? And then how do you support the employees from the whole, how are they engaging with AI too as you go forward? So there's a lot that you need to think about from your structures, which I think are pretty important. And I don't think we've hit on that much yet. But when you think about AI, you need to look at, do you have your AI enterprise strategy in place, and a product level strategy in place? So how are you doing AI, and how are you educating the organization around that? That includes the leaders. The leaders need to be prepared as you go forward, and they need to be they need to be aligned with your AI strategy. They need to understand the impacts to their teams. And they need to be have an AI fluency about them that a lot of leaders don't have at this point. So it's really getting them educated quickly on AI, and there is a lot of different programs that are available to do that. Also, just the hands-on approach, because some of them are going to need that, right? They're going to need that hands-on, and if a tool's coming out in their area, they need to know how AI is going to be utilized, whether they're in finance or whatever functional area or whatever leadership role they have in the organization. From a workforce standpoint, there's a lot that you need to look at. One is your org design, starting right there. I mean, does your organization shift as you change and you know, as roles may be shifted? There's all kinds of new upskilling that needs to be done as you go forward. So how does your organization design change? How do your performance metrics change? And how do the roles shift themselves throughout the organization as this becomes, you know, as we, you know, redundant work gets eliminated and moved into, you know, different, you know, people have to have different roles, like decision making is going to become more important, right? How do you read data? How do you understand the outputs? And then from the workforce, they need to understand, you know, what's coming, what's their predictability, because they're nervous. They do not know how this is going to impact their job. And it's, you know, it's time for organizations to start sharing how, you know, how is this going to impact their jobs and what do they need to do differently? They want to help. They want to be part of the solution. So how can they help, whether it's being a part of a change agent, knowing what ideas they can bring to the table and, you know, actually help your organization become a whole new mindset around how do you think differently culturally from an AI perspective so that your organization can become AI fluent as a whole, not just within one or particular groups or within just leadership. It's got to happen across the board. So org design, lots of upskilling. How do you look at certification changes and just the skills? And some employees will shift into completely different new areas because maybe their roles will be eliminated and they need to have prepared to how to do that. So organizations have to take on that responsibilities. And I've worked with organizations and just how do you do that from a cultural, from an upskilling, from an org design perspective so that they can do that well.
Thank you. Okay, Summer, Jackie, and Joe, 6 minutes left. If you guys could knock it out in 2 minutes apiece, that'd be great. Summer?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. In relation to your org structure, I think it always comes back to people, process, and technology, right? You have to actually start with the people. I think all of us kind of try to jump right to technology, not realizing we need to actually assess how we are structured. What are the strengths, maybe weaknesses or opportunities for improvement on our current staff? And then, you know, for organizations that are thinking, oh, I'm going to have to lay off my staff and then hire new experts, it's, you know, you have to really change the mindset and say, you know, I already have, you know, we're a workforce that loves my organization, is chasing the mission, vision, values of my organization. I need to lean into them to help upskill and train them. So really having that as a focus is going to be very different than what we have seen in the past, especially for the SMBs and even the enterprise that is used to kind of swiping out and bringing in new. So I do think that that's critical as we're looking forward.
I guess,
Joe, would you like to go next? Would you like me to go next?
Joe? Yeah, sorry.
I
My bad.
wasn't sure, but yeah, I'll go ahead and go next. So, I mean, I don't want to, you know, sort of, beat a dead horse here, but I do think that as leaders, we're probably underestimating the impact on the workforce itself. And I think many of us struggle with just what is the nature of work in an AI-powered world? You know, when we look at what these tools and capabilities can do, first of all, one of the reasons they strike fear into us is because we're all part of a knowledge working, sort of industry. And, that's really characterized by two key traits. One is deep domain expertise and the ability to do things in an effective and efficient manner. Well, we've seen capabilities with reasoning models start to exceed, the average person on a pretty routine basis. And in certain fields, we're seeing them greatly exceed the capabilities of an average person just in terms of deep domain expertise. With agentic AI, the ability to automate and complete, tasks on their own, either in an autonomous or semi-autonomous fashion, that takes away the second thing that makes us unique, sort of as individual, knowledge workers. So what does that mean for us in the future, right? It means that we have to transition the way we think about work, the way that we work with these tools. Most of the time when we work with tools, they're sort of an adjunct to what we do, right? We enter records into a CRM, or we're querying this, or we're looking something up on Google. In the future, we won't be able to really exist without deeply integrating ourselves with AI tools. There's an article out there talking about cyborgs and centaurs, which I think is a great analogy. People who view AI as sort of a bolt-on are kind of that centaur, sort of mentality, right? Half man, half horse. Those people will have a little bit of additional capability and productivity gains, but won't be highly effective. The people who are more like cyborgs, who are like, you know what, I can't do my job without AI, kind of like you can't live your life without your phone, right? If you leave your house without your phone, you have to turn around, go back and get it. You won't be able to do your job without, understanding what the capabilities and limitations of every AI tool is at your disposal, and knowing that in such an intimate way is what is going to make you effective and productive in the future. But that does change the nature of work, right? Because now I don't need deep domain expertise to do something. I don't need to complete tasks myself. I can hand those off. But I do need to understand how to guide AI to solve problems, how to break down tasks into something that it can complete. And so it's a different mindset. It's not your straight analytical domain knowledge sort of mindset. So I call this the transition from a knowledge worker to an intellectual worker. And that's where we have to move the workforce in order for them to be effective in this new world. Otherwise, they are going to get left in the dust if you don't start developing your workforce now to start using these tools. AI is not about a competitive advantage. It's about survival, right? I don't like to say, use AI as a competitive advantage, because everybody's doing it, right? We're in the middle of an AI arms race. Your very survival as a company depends on your ability to integrate AI into your systems. And the effectiveness of that comes down to your ability to make sure that your people are deeply integrated with AI at the same time. It's not just throwing AI in and say, oh, we have AI. It's about making people highly effective with AI that makes your organization effective with AI.
I love where Joe's going with that. I will give two stories. Number one, I recently spent time with one of my nephews who's in his late 20s on spring break. His spring break, he came to visit me, and pretty much everything he did, he asked ChatGPT. So I definitely think it is becoming a way of life. I also personally recently wrote 3 trend papers for my business unit. And I will say I was in a different role about a year ago. And in that role, I also had to write a trend paper. And it was kind of pre some of the, really Gen AI people really starting to have that get more mainstream. And the trend paper I wrote took, over the course of the research and writing, probably, I would say, and having marketing involved, et cetera, I'd probably call it a month. These trend papers, I was able to crank them out, and they were internal trend papers, so they didn't have to get prettied out by marketing, but literally within days. So I think the use of AI, Gen AI, I mean, it just is going to become such a major shift in the way that we work. I also mentioned earlier our responsible AI framework that we use at Avanade, and I think from a workforce perspective, this is really our people component. We look, we kind of assess the impact across 3 factors: personal, societal, and environmental. And then we apply values, and then we ultimately establish controls. And I think for us, that's really the human factor when we go to whether you're a technical person that is building the models, or we're going into clients to actually, implement models and help them, get their organizations to embrace AI. I really do feel that the human factor is hugely critical, so that, again, you can build that trust, because there definitely is a fear factor. And then finally, I would say, we have to really look at AI. Our CTO, Aaron, he calls it a force multiplier. And I think that's kind of going along the lines of what Joe's saying. So absolutely agree with a lot of his comments that it really is just going to become, a new way of working. Versus an us versus them, type of scenario. And really, I've personally seen it. I use it every day in any way I can, because I've seen such a huge gain productivity wise in my own work, in my team's work. And, really just hugely am excited about the value that AI will bring.
I mean, I guess what I've come to learn over the past couple months is never before has there been a need like we have today, where a company should be investing in their people again. in learning this and showing them and hiring and taking, because everybody's got to learn this. I mean, that's the way it is. And you guys have all shared all that information as to why, and everybody's going to do it differently. But it has to happen. So in all industries.
Edward, thank you very much for moderating today's panel discussion. Thank you all for
Thank you.
joining. Love
What a great panel.
Love to hear your perspectives. Yeah, this was a great panel. Thank you for sharing your experiences and perspectives. And for those watching this, you can reach out to us at contact@teamcentral.ai. If you have any questions for the panelists, we'll make sure we get those responses back to you. And if we can't answer the question, we'll try to get you to somebody who can. All right. Again, this is Andy Park, Team Central. Thank you very much.